Under the Biden, it was overt. If you were a Christian, forget you. If you objected to abortion, out. If you objected on the COVID unreasonable things like COVID-19, if you objected to being passed over, if you objected to having to sit through hours of this woke DEI training, you get in trouble. If you try to focus on warrior fighting and performance, if you complain that the standards were lowered for women or any other group, you got in trouble. They could see it in their performance. And look, the real hardworking men, women, minorities, none of them liked it. Now there was the career crew and the certain folks that came in the military that wanted this, that pushed it, and the political appointees that came in the administration just rammed it down everyone's throat.
Howdy, everyone, and welcome back to Moment of Truth, the podcast of American Moment. My name is Nick Solheim. I am the CEO of American Moment, and I'm glad to have you join us again for another episode this week. We had on my good friend Darin Selnick, who recently left his role in the Pentagon, but he was running personnel and readiness. So we spent a lot of time talking about wokeness in the military and what this administration is doing to stop it. We also spent some time talking about the VA, everything that has been wrong with that in the past and what we can do to fix it. I would highly recommend, we did a great episode, I think it was last year with Will Tebow, where we were talking about wokeness in the military and the nomination of CQ Brown. It's one of my favorite episodes that we've done of all time, but would be a great place to start before listening to this episode so you can see just how far we've come in this administration in the last couple of months or so. So Darin's a great friend. Very glad to have him on this show. We will go now to Darin Selnick. Darin, thanks so much for coming on Moment of Truth.
Hey, Nick. Glad to be here. Appreciate it.
Very glad to have you. So you have done a lot of work. We haven't done an episode in a long time on wokeness in the military. You've spent a lot of time working on this particular issue, and I think the Pentagon has made leaps and bounds on solving this issue and making the military more ready for conflict. Though surely there's still some work to be done there. But tell us how you got into this position in the first place, where you were. The space you occupy in my brain is like the military wokeness guy, like the guy who knows everything about it and how to destroy it. How did you get there?
Well, first of all, I'm career Air Force. So I'm retired Air Force. And I started experiencing that back in the day. Actually, at the end of the Bush administration in 92, they started doing some rifts because of drawing down the force. And it got found out later, and there were some lawsuits where they actually went ahead and to make sure they had enough women and minority, rather than being merit-based, they literally would take white guys and riff them. Or not promote them.
Yeah. What does that mean for non-military people, like to riff
reduction
somebody?
in force? It's like when if you're at a company and they need to cut people.
Yeah.
So that's how they do it. Military, after the Cold War, started downsizing. And at the height of Reagan, when like the Air Force was like 600,000, it's like 300 and something thousand now. So they started downsizing, and it was supposed to be based on merit. And so what we found out later, and this has really disillusioned a lot of military, and they had a lot of problem with retention because of this. We started noticing that retention boards, promotion boards, people who were at the top were suddenly getting cut and not retained and not promoted. And the protocol person who didn't do anything was being done over the navigator or the pilot or whatever. And what happened a few years later is there was documents on this that instructed these promotion boards and these retention boards to go ahead, and if there wasn't, when you did it based on merit, if there wasn't enough women and minorities who are above the line, below the line. If you're above the line, you stay. If you're below the line, you're not. Then redo the boards until you had them above. And so many guys got cut
Yeah.
They're not promoted who were the best because they wanted to meet their quotas.
Who was it that was crafting those like, who was making the decision to, "We're gonna start moving the military in this direction"?
The careers, the career military and the career civilians. That's
Wow.
what was so when you go in the military, you go in there on a merit-based. It has to be a merit-based because otherwise you lose wars. So the emphasis in the Trump administration on warfighting is a correct emphasis. What Pete Hegseth wants to do with warfighting is the correct way of doing it. With what Trump wants to do is the correct way of doing it. Otherwise, you lose wars. Otherwise, you lose people. Otherwise, you get casualties. You can't have a woke DEI military. You have these weapon systems. You have these expensive hypersonic drones, tanks. It's a people business. And if you can't depend on each other, if you are separated, like when you're in the Air Force, you're all blue.
Mhm.
When you're in the Army, you're all green. You can't have white, black, brown. You can't have women, and you have to have competence. If you don't have competence, the military falls apart. The orders don't happen. And you could see some of this in the Vietnam War when you had the draft and you had people smoking dope and fragging, I mean, shooting people in the back. Can't have this. We have to have a tight, strong military that is focused, whether it's military standards, whether it is education and training, whether it is physical standards. If you don't have a merit based, then you're going to take a $90 million plane and you're going to crash it.
Yeah. So you were saying, that you started experiencing this during your time in the Air Force,
Right.
and then I interrupted you to ask who was writing those documents, but please continue with the story of your career.
Right. So I did the military. I got out and I did healthcare. And then I got involved in the Bush campaign, and I went as a political appointee to Secretary Principi in 2001 and served into 2 Bush campaigns and served at the VA, a special assistant to 3 secretaries, senior advisor to 2 in the Trump administration. Speaker Boehner appointed me on the Commission on Care. So I got to learn a lot of things. As a matter of fact, I was at the VA so long in the Bush administration, the careers forgot I was a political appointee.
Wow.
And they started telling me things. They started telling me about some of the woke stuff. One of the woke things that they did was they didn't like to hire military at the VA, which
Seems odd.
seems odd. And they would forget, I am military and I've been here a long time. I'm political appointed. They're like, oh, if we just didn't have that military, our job would be so much easier if just all those damn veterans weren't clogging up the system and making my day. Like, that's what you're here for. That's the whole mission of the military. So I did that for a couple of terms and started learning about how the careers, whether what I experienced at DOD when I was in the military or at the VA, we're doing these sorts of things. We did a lot of good stuff, did legislation on homelessness, create a Center for Faith-Based Community Initiatives so we could partner and do all sorts of things with the private sector and because the government can't do it all.
Mm-hmm.
If you try to get the government to get all what you get is what we got now, a big, fat, bloated government, which is why we did the Doge and why we're trying to do that. After the Bush administration, I started working for CVA where I met Pete Hegseth in 2012. And we did some great things. We did first accountability with President Trump in 2017 when I got into the Trump administration. Before that, I did the Commission on Care. Speaker Boehner appointed me to the Commission on Care, how to fix the VA healthcare system, which with now Secretary Hegseth, we did a task force. So why wait for someone else's task force? Let's do our own task force where we know the results are. Newt Gingrich helped us with that task force. And that became the blueprint for President Trump on how to fix the VA in 2017.
Yeah.
So because of the work I did, I was asked to come into the Trump administration. I, worked on the campaign, did all the transition stuff. And then I got recruited to work at the White House, which was quite an honor. Kind of scary at first to go in there because you don't know what to expect. You hear all the stories. But really, it's the White House is the most exhausting job you ever do, but the most satisfying. Yeah. You are the 24/7 day job.
Right.
Wherever you are never really on vacation. You have your computer with you. You have your cell phones with you. And what the president and chief of staff need, But there I was able to work on the Mission Act and the accountability, and President Trump did the very first accountability. Now Secretary Hexeth was off on the sidelines doing Fox and Friends and cheerleading, talking to the presidents and helping push it from the outside, because you need to push it on the inside, you need to push it outside. A lot of nervous Republicans.
Yeah. Nervous about helping veterans.
Nervous about doing anything new.
Yeah.
Nervous about a veterans organization call him out, or the left call him out, want to be good with the media. So what Newt Gingrich told us when he worked with us on our task force report how to fix the VA was like, Congress never acts unless there's an emergency.
Right.
So you gotta make sure people know what the emergency is. And veterans dying was the emergency. And an antiquated system that took care of the system and not veterans is a problem, which happened again during the Biden administration. But to kind of quickly wrap up till today, we did the Mission Act, which was the generational changing of going away from socialized healthcare and going to a normal healthcare system, modeled it after the TRICARE Prime system, where veterans actually had choice, the first choice to pick. You think it's kind of weird that veterans would be the only group in this country that couldn't have choice of the hospital and the doctors they would pick, but they were.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. First accountability, where you could actually fire employees who were bad employees and not have the unions keep them on forever. These were great achievements that the Biden administration, after I left the Trump administration, systematically went to undo.
Yeah.
In the meanwhile, in terms of the wokeness and the DEI, you could track it. I even wrote an op-ed about this in 2010 under the Obama administration. You could see them putting in places. When you make the DOD just another agency, just another federal government agency with all those set-asides and wokeness, you lose your ability to fight.
Yeah.
You lose your ability to fight. A friend of mine once said, there's a reason there's a river between the DOD and the rest of government. The separation between the two.
Yeah.
Help President Trump in the re-election as much as I could. And then we saw under Biden, we saw full press at the VA and DOD of all the wokeness about going ahead and lowering standards, lowering dress codes. There's a reason you have these standards. You have to rebuild your population to be one uniform, effective fighting force. You can't operate like a civilian. You have to be able to take orders. You have to be able to give orders. You have to do this unquestionably. You have to have the ability to carry a 100-pound pack. These things are absolute, or you die, or your buddy dies, or all sorts of bad things happen. Yeah. So these are very critical things. And then when my friend Pete Hexeth got identified to be the secretary, I was on the phone with him and he said, Darin, I need all that experience you have working the issues in VA, fighting the deep state and winning, because we had a big fight to do accountability, to do the Mission Act, to stop the bad practices. I need you here at DOD. So he said, I want you and Eric Garrissey, Distinguished Service Cross and Silver Star. I need you guys to be my point people on ending the woke and the DEI and lots of other things. So I came in originally as a senior advisor. And then a week before we came in, we had a conference call in all the Pete and all the Secretary Hexeth and all the political fighters, Mike Duffy and everyone else. And they said, Darin, you're going to head up P&R. I said, I'm going to what? You're going to be performing the duties of the Undersecretary of Defense, Personnel Readiness. And so all the initial executive orders, the DEI, the woke executive orders, the transgender, all that stuff was coming through P&R. So I had my hands full, but I had learned the lessons of the deep state, the administrative state, in every way that they would tell you they were doing something, but not actually do it.
Right. There are so many questions I want to ask after that, but I suppose let's start here. You walk in. I don't think a lot of people really understand how bad it actually was.
Right.
Like I know some from talking to you and talking to, my friend Dan Caldwell and other people, in the building, that it was the wokeness was really bad. Can you tell us, like, some of the things that you encountered, the first couple days in the building?
Well, it permeated everything. As a matter of fact, when we first came in the secretary's office, the senior staff, generals and whatnot, treated us with disdain. Like, what do you guys here? And go pick an office and and stuff like that. So they didn't even have a good in processing anymore. What we learned after we got ourselves acquainted what was going on was that 4 years of Biden was like having 4 years of a really bad renter who was destroying the inside of your house.
Yeah.
And so the outside may have looked good, but if you've ever been on one of these HGTV shows and they go to the fixer upper shows, you open the door and it's like, holy crap. Right?
Yeah.
Literally.
Or some other
Or
word.
some other word. Holy. Edit that out. But it's like, man, I can't believe how bad it is. Sloppily dressed. So many guys with beards.
Yeah.
Just abusing all the codes. The DEI was rampant. It was in everything. The senior level generals afraid to do anything. It was in the DODEA, which is the schools that they have for the civilian kids. It was rampant in there. They were teaching, all the socialist ideas. It was throughout all the training curriculums. It was at the academies. It was everywhere. So we had a task force, and I had learned that when you have a task force to start rooting this out, and once again, we had the executive orders on the DEI. There had been an NDAA bill previously, a few months previous summer, that had said, hey, you have to start rooting out the DEI. What I learned is you cannot take on face value anything these people do, because they hide. They hide. A lot of good career people, but the lefties who infiltrated and permeated the career ranks, and some of who are on the military stuff, they were going after. There was a reason that they had went against the law and was supporting abortion. And they had every month, rather than working on the warfighting skills, they had every history month, Asian History Month, Black History Month, Gay History Month. Every month was some sort of diverse group. And you can't do that. You have to focus on you're spending all your time going to gay pride parades and Black History Month and these organizations, a lot of these organizations, they would have videos and stuff up there that would, be mocking our commander in chief.
Wow.
And they were it may seem small, but even things like the leadership boards. Leadership boards, when you go in every facility, it has the president, it has a secretary, it has the whole leadership team. Well, we were finding various places where President Trump wasn't up there. Secretary Hegseth wasn't up there. The political appointees were not up there. It's like, you know what? You don't get to do that. So, but you know how we found out a lot about this stuff? The good men and women in the military would contact us through social media.
Wow.
Maybe contacting Secretary Hegseth. They'd be posting stuff. And so, for example, there are these leadership boards which they had not put up the president or the secretary over in Europe. And some troops in Europe on social media said, hey, you need to look at this. So I would always, I was in P&R for a couple months, and then secretary said, hey, I need you. You're doing a great job in P&R with ending this woke and this DEI stuff. I need you to come to fix up my secretary's office and become the deputy chief of staff. So as deputy chief of staff, I would do this stuff. And then I was a deputy chief of staff. They got the notice that the leadership boards didn't have the pictures up through social media.
Yeah.
And so called over there, and they confirmed. Someone took a picture, confirmed it. And so I literally had to call over Europe, which is a few hours ahead, and basically get a certain Navy lieutenant out of bed.
Yeah.
At 10 o'clock at night or whatever, and get him to the phone and say, why don't you have these photos up? No excuse, sir. So I'm like, put them up now. We have to send a message. Got to send a message. Not that I enjoy rousting people up at 10 o'clock at night, but
Right.
you got to send a message. Put the pictures up of the president, put the pictures up of the secretary, get this thing fixed, take a picture and send it to me. Then talk to his commanding officer, rousted him up, said this is not acceptable. It's been over 2 months and you still do not have the president. This is stuff that should be changing like week 1.
Yeah.
But here's the positive side of sending a message. Feedback that came to me was that everyone heard about that. And guess what? Every leadership board was fixed throughout Europe.
Wow.
Word spread. Fix the leadership boards. I tell you another story. So we put out the guidance that said, you can go to conferences, but you can't go to woke DEI conferences. You can't go to those sorts of things. And so here's the guidelines. If they are pushing this on their website, if they are saying negative things about the president or the secretary, give them an advance notice, because a lot of these organizations, because the Biden put out notice that said, hey, if you want us to come, you've got to do the woke stuff. You got to do the DEI stuff, et cetera.
You got to have like a land acknowledgement on your website or something.
Right. Yeah. So we set out, now you're going to send out the opposite word. We're not going to be where there is the woke and the DEI, or saying negative things about the president. So there was an example. We had, we put out the guidance, and we expect generals to be able to take this guidance and run with it. And then, because they have to set the example for the field commanders. I had all these 3- and 4-star generals because we had a weekly meeting on this with the deputy secretary and all the top generals and acting undersecretaries, all stuff like that. And I have all these 3- and 4-star generals saying, can you issue additional guidance saying for us not to do it? I'm like, what do you mean? I already issued the guidance. Well, we got like this Black Engineers Conference, and we always go to this. And I said, well, did you scrub the website? Well, yeah, but we kind of would like you to go ahead and, we don't know. I'm like, what is it? 3- and 4-star generals can't look at a website and figure this out. So we looked at the website that they were like hemming and hawing about, and they had all these videos that were mocking President Trump.
Yeah.
And so I sent a harshly worded email to all these generals and and the commanders who wanted to go to this. And I said, we looked at this, and there's all this stuff on the website has all this DEI stuff, and it has derogatory videos of your commander in chief. You are not allowed to go. And I was like, okay, is anyone going to push back? Anyone say, hey, who's this guy? Who's this guy putting out this memo? Nobody complained.
Wow.
Nobody complained. And then I caught him in the hallway, and then I went to the weekly meeting, and I said, guys, what is wrong with you guys? You guys could have went to the website. You should have saw this stuff. You should have just known not to go. You should have sent out the word. They said, in the hallway, they said, well, we wanted you to put out the word. I said, we got a problem here. Why can't I have 3- and 4-star generals don't have enough backbone to put out the word and not to go to a Black Engineers Conference? You still recruit Black engineers. We want Black engineers, but we're not going to go to conferences where we're mocking the president, and the focus of the conference is that we should have a quota of Black engineers. Those sorts of things. It was nuts.
Yeah, you told that story about the leadership boards, which is a very cool story. But it brings this question to mind, like what is the general view of the rank and file, like guys who are enlisting out of high school, or like junior officers and that sort of thing about all this woke stuff?
Well, they love what we're doing.
Yeah.
They've been suffering because anytime they spoke up, they got in trouble. They got denied promotions. So there was in the past, like I talked about all the way back to the 1992, 1993, where they were covertly kind of doing this stuff. Under the Biden, it was overt. If you were a Christian, forget you. If you objected to abortion, out. If you objected on the COVID unreasonable things like COVID-19, if you objected to being passed over, if you objected to having to sit through hours of this woke DEI training, you get in trouble. If you try to focus on warrior fighting and performance, if you complain that the standards were lowered for women or any other group, you got in trouble. They could see it in their performance. And look, the real hardworking men, women, minorities, none of them liked it. Now, there was the career crew and the certain folks that came in the military that wanted this, that pushed it, and the political appointees that came in the administration just rammed it down everyone's throat. Abortion was a good example. They just rammed that down there. They did a memo. The P&R head did a memo that just went against the law, went against the Hyde Amendment, and just rammed abortion in there. When I got in P&R, I found out that it was just done by the former P&R guy. And so I did my own memo.
Yeah.
And ended the practice and went back to the lawful practice. We had so much stuff going on with all the DEI and the woke stuff and everything else that it didn't even get noticed by the press. VA got noticed by the press because they had to do the regulation. Another interesting quickie story, Naval Academy. I don't know if you've heard about how the Naval Academy, their curriculum had to be scrubbed and everything.
I did.
So this is how the idiocy of the lack of awareness when you're so full of woke. So at the Naval Academy, at the academies, they decided that the executive order on DEI didn't apply to them. That only applied to the civilian schools. And we're like, no, the executive order applies to everyone. So they were dumb enough to talk to the Baltimore Sun, some career staff at the Naval Academy, and tell them the president's executive order didn't apply to them.
Mm.
So you can't always trust what's in the media, right? So I went to the chief of staff of the political chief of staff of the Navy, and I said, check this out. So he checked it out. I came back. He said, Darin, the story's right. They actually did say that. So now I got real upset. I said, look, they said they didn't have to do it. They didn't have to do a scrub. I said, I want a scrub of the Naval Academy, and I want it done before Secretary Hexeth and he's going to be going there next week. I want that scrub done before we get there of all the books and get rid of all the DEI woke stuff.
Wow.
Socialist stuff, too mommy stuff, whatever's in there. You got the guy, whatever you're trying to brainwash our cadets, get that out. So they went and they did a scrub. A couple librarians quit because we were doing the scrub.
Wow.
But here's the insane part. Then I get a call back saying, we did the scrub. We identified like 700 books or something like that we're going to do a further scrub. We're not going to destroy anything, the government property. We're going to move it out of the library and into a room. So I said, okay, fine. He said, here's the problem. We identified the room. We put all the books together to move them. We went to the room. And in the time between we identified the room and moved the books, which was just like within a couple hours, somebody on the staff superglued the door shut.
Wow.
I said, what is this, high school?
Yeah.
They super glued the door shut. And so now the Navy Secretary was mad and launched a full investigation because this is destruction of property.
Yeah.
I mean, these were the lengths that people will go through, like even super glue the door shut. I mean, if you want to quit because you're a DEI person, fine. But I mean, a couple other examples. We had to reform the DODEA, the civilian schools, because overseas they actually had staff that was helping students protest our commander in chief and protest our policies. It's like
unreal.
You don't get to protest on a military base. Well, we want to keep them safe. I said, no. I said, do you not support that? You don't we would find this once again, social media. They were dumb enough to make quotes into the press. I said, that's how pervasive. We had to go through every documentation. And we had to set up a whole validation effort because I learned this at the VA. You got to go ahead and send your troops out there, your trusted troops out there to go check to make sure they're actually doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
So we send them to the academies. We send them to the field, put together a whole validation effort. Everyone thought I was crazy, but I'm like, you got to do this. That's the only way to know. People have to know that you're going to come out and check, or they'll say it and never do it.
I'm afraid to ask you more questions because every story you tell gets crazier than the one that you just told me. But let's try this on for size. You brought up earlier the, under the previous administration, we had started to be less strict about dress code, beards. And then I know I've read about like a lot of the physical fitness stuff too. Maybe setting the physical fitness stuff aside, why does like the dress code and, like basic grooming, why do those matter?
Right. It matters because it's professionalism.
Yeah.
We have to have a professional force. We have to have standards. And if we don't have standards, we basically don't. The military is not the civilian world. You lose certain rights. And there's no room for error. So if you're going to be droppily dress sloppy and have a beard, then are you going to be cleaning your gun? Are you going to be doing the checklist on your plane?
Mm.
Are you going to be following orders in a timely manner? So professionalism is key. This is a professional military. And if you don't have the professionalism, you don't. If you want to go back historically, one of the problems we had when we got overrun initially in the Korean War, because we had so downsized our military that we had all these National Guard units, and the National Guard back then was not the National Guard of today, which were basically non-professional civilians who got suddenly thrown in battle. They didn't have the professionalism, they didn't have the detail, and they got crushed. And if we don't have the professionalism, if we don't maintain military discipline, you have to be able to take orders, you have to be able to react, you have to have things ready to go. You can't worry about, the standards at the moment's notice. You have to know that everything is taken care of. There's a chain of command, that there's attention to detail. And what we have found out, and Patton was a big stickler on this.
Yeah.
Got himself in trouble a little bit in World War II.
Yeah.
But what we have found out is if you don't have the professionalism, if you just become like the VA, you will get VA results. You will once again, you will be at a loss. You will be having a tough time in your warfighting, and we do not have the luxury of that.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about the physical fitness standards too, because I know the Pentagon has been doing a lot of work on this over the last couple of weeks and months to make sure that we have a fit fighting force. How bad did it get under the Biden administration, and what's being done now to fix it, the physical fitness standards?
Right. So Eric Garrissey set up a team. It was a big acronym. Everything in the DoD's acronym.
Yeah.
JIASIC. So we used to kid JIASIC Park, but but he set up a team. And part of that team was the validation and standard team. So the secretary said, "Hey, look, Darin worked with Eric. Eric was the main point on it. We worked with PNR. So we did a review of all the military standards, but you could just see it in the Pentagon, just sloppily dressed."
I see it when I'm there all
Right.
the time.
Right.
Yeah.
And one of the things, I was pushing to end, you don't need your BDUs in the Pentagon.
Right.
And a lot of people were using the BDUs, and some generals admitted this to me. They said, yeah, we probably should start going back to wearing our dress uniforms and stuff like that, because in the BDUs, you can hide being overweight.
Right.
And so we don't need fat, sloppy guys and gals wandering around. And there was a reason for the BDUs when we were on a war footing. We're not on war footing.
Right.
And so I've seen it go back and forth from, the days when I came on active duty in 85. You wore BDUs once a week when you did that stuff. Now you're wearing it every day, except, occasionally you're not, because you're on a war footing. Well, you're not on a war footing now. And so once again, it goes back to dress and professionalism. We saw the standards in the field deteriorate. We saw, and there was lots of news stories. The Marines were the lone holdouts. And so there's a minimum standard that you need to be just to be on active duty. And then based on your military occupational, MOS or AFSC, depending on which branch you are, you need to be able to do certain things. If you're in the field, if you don't have a 100-pound back, you don't have ammunition, you don't have food, you don't have warfighting gear. So you got to be able to be good. It doesn't matter if you're 20 or 50. If you're a warfighter and you need to be in the field and you need to, so there are all these standards, and if you're in Ranger school, you need the standards. They were lowering standards so that they could get more people to pass, of the right kind of people that they wanted to pass, so they could say that they passed.
Yeah.
And so that lack of warfighting. Now look, if you have kids, if your kids are not, have lack of discipline, getting them disciplined, they get mad,
Yeah.
they get fussy. It's not any different when people have lower expectations and a lack of discipline and a lack of standards. A lot of them kind of get upset when you put it in there. And so some of these stories you've eked out is a certain minority of people, small percentage, who didn't want these standards, who don't mind being overweight, who don't mind dress sloppy, who don't care about the professionalism.
Yeah.
Saying this stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's going to be some pushback, but you need to have the warfighting. You need to have the standards. You need to know if you're a Ranger, it means something.
Yeah.
If you're a Green Beret, you mean something. If you're Special Forces, that means something. And you need to know that your average military man and woman, even if they're not needing the 100-pound package, they can meet the minimum physical requirements to do their job. Because in the end, and you have to say, well, gosh, that guy has a desk job. Why does he need to? Why does he need to have these physical standards? You could be at a desk job today, but you know what? When you're overseas, if you're in Iraq, if you're in Afghanistan, if there's a fight, you may be the cook, you may be the HR person, but you may need to pick up a gun.
Yeah.
And a 100-pound pack or a 50-pound pack or whatever, and just do the fighting.
Yeah.
You may need to be on that turret, on that Humvee with a 50K. It's just the way it is. So everyone, that's a big change from the old days. In the 80s, they didn't think that way. You go to basic training, shoot your gun. After 9/11, it changed everything.
Yeah.
Everyone realized that you don't know who's going to pop. Even some of these terrorists have popped up at our military facilities inside.
Right.
You got to be able to know how to use a gun. You got to be able to carry a pack. You got to have these physical standards. You may have to carry your buddy. These things mean something based on real warfare. And we want to avoid war as much as we can. The last person who wants to be in a war and die is the military men and women, but we have to be prepared for it at all times.
Yeah. No, that's definitely true. I mean, my dad enlisted in the Marine Corps at 17.
Right.
And his MOS was SATCOM.
Right.
Okay. So he was not like infantry or anything like that. And I've got this picture of them. Actually, I have it on my desk in my office, of my parents on their wedding day. And he's wearing his dress blues and he looks as jacked as he's ever been, this huge guy. And I've got this other picture of him with all of his Marine Corps buddies who are also at the wedding, and they're, all dressed up. And, I've got some of his old marksmanship awards from Camp Pendleton and that sort of thing. And you think, this guy's, today people would think like, oh yeah, this guy's MOS is like SATCOM. You just need to be that good or doesn't need to be that fit or whatever. But this was in the 90s. Like this was not that long ago. And it used to really matter. And now, you go, because you see like military officers walking around here in DC all the time. Right. It's like, looks like a totally different military.
Yep.
Are there any other militaries around the world where like the wokeness or the physical fitness, benchmarks have gotten this bad?
Well, you can look at some of our European allies.
NATO allies. I assumed that was going to be the case.
Like Great Britain and France and stuff like that. I would say the one ally we have that doesn't do it, which would be the standard, is Israel.
Yeah.
And they have any other country, and I'm Jewish, but they have such a small territory, and they can't afford to lose anything.
Yeah.
And so everybody gets in the military, and they many years ago tried to play around with a little bit of this stuff. Let's make women combat soldiers and stuff like that. And they found out quickly, no.
Yeah, that doesn't work.
The Marines tested it and they found out, no. It's a big difference to be able to carry 100-pound pack once or for a day versus every day.
Yeah.
In and out every day. And look, it takes a toll. Even on the biggest, strongest guys, down the road, when they leave the military service, they're at the VA because they have hurt backs.
Right.
Because they have compressed spines. The difference is for the women who do it, few women may be able to carry that 100-pound back, but they break down much quicker. And you can't structure a military by who can do it once or who can do it for a few weeks or a few months. You got to structure it by what you need to be able to do in every day, in and out. And that's why the military is a young man's game.
Yeah.
So when you have a lack of recruitment and you bring in 42-year-olds, that's not a good thing.
Right. Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I do want to talk a little bit about the VA stuff, because I feel like there are so few true experts like you who like know what's wrong with it, know how to fix it. I should probably, I've been telling him about this for a long time. I need to have our mutual friend Tom Sauer on to talk about some of this stuff too. But what exactly, people have been complaining about the VA for as long as I've been alive. What's wrong with it? Why does it not work?
Until President Trump, it was the only true socialized healthcare in the country. No different than the Canadian socialized healthcare or the Great Britain socialized healthcare. So everyone else in this country, including DOD, if you don't have the government telling you, here's a doctor you have to have or you don't get care. Here's a hospital you have to have or you don't get care. And if we can't do something, we'll tell you if we don't think you can do something. True socialized healthcare. And to keep it socialized, they would make veterans go literally hundreds of miles to get care if they needed to, or they would fly them across the country. Under Trump, that's when we first started ending that socialized healthcare. That's what we did, the Mission Act, and we started using the DoD model of TRICARE Prime and created the access standards. We have further to go. We need to stop worrying about protecting the institution and do what every other American, even those on Medicaid and Medicare, can do, is have a selection of doctors and hospitals, and you pick the doctor and hospital that works for you. And so if the VA hospital works fine for you, good. So the problem with the VA, when you have socialized care and you have no accountability, you have no incentive to provide good customer service. You have no incentive to provide. Now you have some good docs, and that's not the issue. But if you have to wait 2 months, 3 months, 4 months for an appointment, 6 months, we've literally had veterans die because they are diagnosed with cancer, and the VA delayed seeing them for 8 months. By the time the VA saw them after 8 months, they literally said, it's stage 4 cancer, go home and die.
Yeah.
So you can't do that. And people say all the time, Pete had me on Fox and Friends like every quarter to give the VA updates and all this stuff like that. Well, what's the difference? There are good hospitals and bad hospitals in the VA and the private sector. That's true. But if you have a bad hospital, or bad doctor, you say, you know what? You're fired. I'm going to pick somebody else. If you have a bad doctor in the VA, tough.
Yeah.
You don't get your health care. And that's why the vast majority of veterans who actually have VA healthcare use their private care.
Mm-hmm.
VA has a number, it's called the Reliance number. Of the veterans who use the VA, and only about 1/3 of veterans use the VA, of those veterans, they get only about 36% of their care at the VA, and they get 64% of their care in the private sector, even though the VA care is basically free.
Yeah.
And we all know healthcare in the private sector can be expensive.
Extremely.
Right. And it's all because of the wait times, it's all the way you're treated. I mean, if you want to talk about horror stories, I can tell you horror stories. I had a friend who was in a VA hospital once a few years ago before we implemented the Mission Act. And he got to use his Medicare, but he was an AMVETS post commander. And he had some heart problems, and he went in the hospital for a heart problem. And one night they said, we ran out of food. I said, what? They said, yeah, there's a diet you're supposed to have, and half the food that he's supposed to have on the food list, they ran out of. I said, what hospital runs out of food?
Yeah.
I mean, run over to Ralph's or Kroger's or whatever and buy some damn food.
Right.
So they literally said, no, you can't, you can only eat these few items because we ran out of food on the other stuff that we had. I said, who runs out of food? And my friend Tom Sauer, I mean, he sees it firsthand.
Right.
Literally the veterans are being denied mental health and substance abuse. So these are the guys who did 2, 3, 4, 5 tours who need help. I had one guy over in Arkansas where I got a call from a community provider that was trying to help him. And he was homeless. I mean, he had a substance use problem. He needed immediate. VA wouldn't even talk to him at first. So I told him to go to the emergency room. We went to the emergency room and said, yeah, this guy who's homeless because he had been to support his drug habit. He had been stealing from family members. They said, yeah, we don't have a bed available. And so what we're going to do is give you an Uber to a homeless shelter until we have a bed that might come available in 30 months. Now with him was a certified community care provider who had a bed available right that second. Okay, so they're certified. They're in the VA network. They're a good provider. They have a bed right this second. VA said, no, we don't care that you have a bed available. We'll send him on an Uber to a homeless shelter, and he just have to wait there. Well, he could be dead in 30 days,
right,
or 60 days, or whenever they have an open. This is the crazy stuff that you do under socialized healthcare. And so what we're trying to do is with the Mission Act, and under the Biden, they said, Mission Act, we're just gonna stop implementing what the law says. Accountability actually stood up in Congress at a hearing and said, we're going to bow to the unions. We're not going to hold anybody accountable anymore. So the VA has got a big thing right now, and there's a new bill called the Veterans Access Act that fixes by law all the stuff that the Biden people had been undoing it. But ultimately, you need to have full choice, and here's why. You have full choice in every other benefit in the VA. The VA doesn't have its own colleges for the GI Bill. The VA doesn't have its own, banks for home loans.
Mhm.
But the VA has its own facilities, which is fine if that's a facility you want to go to. The only way to make sure you get the healthcare that you deserve and that you earned is full choice. And that means whether it's the VA or the community, at all times, the veteran gets to pick. The veteran gets to do it. And if you're a federal government employee and have FEHB, you can pick the plan you want. You can pick the provider you want. It's only the veterans who use the VA. If you're Medicare, you get to do it. If you're Medicaid, you get to do it. Only VA. DOD, you get to do it. Until you do that, until you break up the monopoly and end the socialized healthcare, that's the only way the VA facilities will actually fix themselves up. And you think of any socialized healthcare system, any monopoly. If you have the only gas station in town, you're probably going to have high prices and bad customer service. And so that's why we have to end the monopoly. That's why we have to take the next step that we talked about in Trump 1, which is full choice so that the veterans can pick any provider in the network. We've done it with urgent care. It works great.
Yeah.
Now we need to do it to the rest. And so, for example, I use Camp Pendleton. If I decided that Camp Pendleton suddenly was terrible, which it's not, it's been pretty good. I could go ahead and do TRICARE Select and do a PPO and say, forget
Yeah.
Camp Pendleton. I could do that. But you can't do it if you're a veteran and you're using the VA system.
Right. Wow. That's wild. You recently wrote an op-ed. Was it with Dan?
I've done ones with Dan and without Dan.
Well, this one that we were talking about before we started
Right.
in the New York Times.
Yes, that was with my good friend Dan Caldwell.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah, tell us a little bit
policy
about that.
guru.
Yeah, policy guru, indeed.
Well, one of the things that we had noticed and is whatnot is that in something I called the time I spent in DOD, the few months I spent there, it's one thing to be in the military, is another thing to be, P&R is about 60% of all the stuff that's going on. And as deputy chief of staff, you're involved in everything. So I called it my DOD immersion therapy.
Mhm.
If you want to learn language, you do immersion, right?
Yeah.
So if you want to learn everything DOD and you want to learn it fast and hard and then 24/7 doing it, become a political appointee in DOD.
This is exactly actually what I've been telling all of our fellows that now work at DOD, because they're all going in as like special assistants.
Right.
And I'm like, there's no way to learn more quickly in the building than do that.
Exactly.
Be special assistant, do everything from like scheduling meetings to preparing the briefs and learning all the acronyms and all of that stuff. It's literally the best way to do it. Just dive right in.
Right. So Dan and I wrote the op-ed because Dan's the foreign policy guy, and I'm the expert on the P&R stuff and stuff like. But all foreign policy is dependent on us having a strong military. If you don't have a strong military, you have no foreign policy. You can't implement it. I mean, you can't impose your will on. The president couldn't impose his will on Ukraine. Can't do anything about China. Can't do anything about Taiwan. We've had some foreign policy disasters based on poor implementation of the military. And so what happens is people get real excited. And this is one of the things when I would go on trips and talk to generals, I'd ask about the readiness level. I'd ask about, hey, you like to move these chess pieces, these aircraft carriers, destroyers. Do you actually have the people, men and women, able to run these destroyers? What's your readiness level? It's one thing to sit there and say theoretically, but then you look at a low readiness level and you say, how long can we actually sustain operations? So look, we did a fantastic job when we put this on the op-ed. We went to Iran, kicked their butt, destroyed their nuclear facility. But if we were in a long-term war, how long could we do that?
Mhm.
If we don't, you have to have the munitions, you have to have the shipbuilding, you have to have the planes, but you have to have the people that are trained. And when you, and I can't say anything classified, but when you look at the stuff in the Pentagon, you look at readiness levels, you say, how long could we actually sustain operations in the Middle East? How long can we sustain operations in China? What are those readiness levels? And so people get excited about hypersonic missiles and the newest fighter that costs $90 million a year. They forget that war is a people business.
Mhm.
If you don't have the people to run the satellites, to run the tanks, you take territory, but you have to have someone there.
Right.
So, I mean, look, I was an Air Force guy. and you don't win wars with the Air Force. Now you soften them up, you take out installations, but eventually the Army and the Marines got to be physically there.
Right.
If they don't have their health care, they're not physically able to be there. And one of the things I learned was our military healthcare system couldn't return guns to the fight.
Mm-hmm.
So we had 4 years of neglect, 4 years of not being able to get the right money, 4 years of deferring money, 4 years of sending it to other places, pet projects and stuff like that. And we are in a rebuild phase. We are in a fix-it phase. And people don't understand that. And so if we're going to have effective foreign policy, whatever the president is going to lead in that foreign policy with his wisdom, and the secretary is going to implement that, and we want the secretary to be successful in implementing that, he needs to have the body troops. So we need a couple of things. One, we need the troops that we have to be warfighters and not focused on things that are not warfighting. And that's where we talked about the DEI and the woke and filling that. We also need them healthy.
Yeah.
We also need them housed in their barracks. We also need, this is a different military. It's not, when my dad was in the military, he had to get permission from his company commander to get married. I have the paperwork.
Yeah.
Now you have to have childcare to send people to work because you get both spouses working. So you have to have the childcare. You have to have some place for the kids to go to school. You have to have the place for the healthcare. You have to have the place for their spouses and their kids can get. If you're out in the field and you're worried whether or not your spouse can have that operation or not, you're in bad shape. If you get wounded, we don't have a draft where we can just send people in and kick them out. And we haven't, millions of new ones coming in like the Vietnam War. We got to patch up and send them on. We have trouble with that. So we can't divert money. We have to make sure, because if we do, we don't have a fighting force that's effective. Number one, we have all these ships and tanks, but we can't deploy them well. Number two, how are we going to recruit and retain?
Yeah.
Even Washington talked about that back in the day. President Washington, about how you treat the troops now leads to how you will have troops in the future. So this is critical. That's why we wrote the op-ed. We want to put the spotlight on that we're doing a great job, and we have great deputy secretary and great undersecretaries and new Air Force secretaries and whatnot. They just need the support. They need the support of OMB. They need support of Congress. They need support not just to look at the shiny objects, but support them as they try to take this broken down institution that the Biden people handed to us and rebuild it. It doesn't happen in a day.
Right.
It doesn't happen. And that was part of the Doge effort, which was let's look at the inefficiencies so we can redirect the money to what we need. And therefore put the right money in the military. Example, under the Biden administration, you identified what you needed. You were not allowed to ask for more than 80% of what you needed. So we had a $10 billion deficit in maintenance for facilities. And that's why steam pipes are breaking in what was supposed to be the premier healthcare in the country with Walter Reed, which is steam pipes broken and our men and women sent to the private sector because we have flooded areas and we needed $36 million to do an immediate fix. So we got it. And so we can't divert the money. We got to pay attention to this. Secretary had me write a whole op-ed when I was over in PNR on this whole subject. And people were like, wow, you guys are admitting there's problems. I say, yeah, you can't address problems unless you admit the problems and then fix the problems.
Yeah.
So there's a hell of a lot going on, and you can see all these crazy stories that come out and stuff like that. And but there's always that resistance. When I was at the VA, it was the same thing. They didn't want the president to have a choice. And so when I was after the White House, I went back to the VA to implement it. So they'd make up fake stories about me illegally traveling and stuff like that. They get some Democrats to rally. They're always making up this crazy stuff. But that's why if you have the experience, you're prepared and dot every I, cross every T.
Yeah. What were some of the, crazy things when you were coming into PNR as it relates to like facilities and the medical care and that sort of thing that showed, that under the Biden administration we were not ready to be able to take care of these troops?
I actually did some field visits, like to Camp Pendleton.
Yeah. And
because suddenly the wait times has gone really long over at the, you're supposed to be able to see your primary care doctor within a week. It's suddenly, and I'm a user of the system. So if suddenly it's 4 weeks when it's always been like 2 days, something's wrong. What I was finding out is that under the Biden administration, they had set up the Defense Health Agency, and they'd put all these crazy policies in place. They couldn't get, they have to deploy. Our men and women docs have to deploy. They weren't getting replacements in. So we'd have like 3 nurses doing the job of 8.
Yeah. Wow.
And then we had a general who, rather than spending the $36 million to fix up Walter Reed, would divert the money to a pet project.
Yeah.
And so we were getting this. So we did a 30-day review. And at the end of the 30-day review, I was seeing all the results from across the country about how bad. So the secretary put me in charge when I was there of the military healthcare reform. And we put in together the plans. We had a disastrous switch over to a new contractor to handle the community care part. When you can't go to Camp Pendleton, you need to go to community care. They have a network just like the VA does. They did a terrible switch over, which they shouldn't have done. So we had to fix that. So basically, they were just bad managers, bad leaders, and things were falling apart. It's like if you have an apartment building and you hire someone to manage your apartment building and they never fix anything.
Yeah.
After a few years, you got a lot of maintenance.
Yeah.
A lot of things falling apart.
Yeah. Well, last question here, and I gotta ask this because you told me about it the first time we ever met a couple months ago. You also have a side career as a movie extra. Please tell us, how the hell did you get into that? Some of the movies you've been in, what the experience has been like.
Right. Well, I got it by accident. So my family actually is the poor relatives of some famous Hollywood people. David O. Selnick. So back in the day, Gone with the Wind and some of those famous movies.
Oh, yeah.
My family immigrated from the Ukraine, and part of the family became the O. Selnick part, and the poorer side, my side of the family, got mad at them, and they dropped the Z in Selnick, so we became Selnick. And actually, my dad came out to as a teenager, came out and visited the Selnick side of the family. So we were always told it was a dirty business. Don't go into businesses, terrible business. Don't do it. But we always knew about that side of the family. My daughter was a theater major, and there was a open call for extras for a movie that she wanted to do, The Last Airbender, which was a cartoon show.
Yeah.
And so she begged me to take her to this open call for extras. And I realized in Philadelphia, so I realized I had nothing to do. So I just hung out with her and talked to people and went through the process and filled out the forms and stuff like that, just to kill the time. 3 weeks later, I got a call to be in the movie. She did not.
Wow.
As you can see.
Does she still hold that over your head? Or?
Yes, she does. For about the entire time, I did about 3 weeks of that movie as a samurai type warrior.
Yeah.
And took me about 40 minutes to get dressed in this and everything in this outfit, is a samurai type warrior outfit. The most common thing in our house for a few months after that was, "I hate you, Daddy."
Yeah.
And you didn't even want to come, and you ended up, and I didn't get a call. But that led to, I had to do this thing in water, so I got this exemption thing, which led me to be asked to join the union. And it was fun. You got paid, you got free food, you get to do different things. So I started doing things in the DC area, and then we moved to California. I did How Do You Know, which was a baseball themed movie.
That's right. Yeah.
Which I got to be a stand-in for one of the baseball players. So I got to go to the Washington National Stadiums and hang out in the dugout in a regular outfit. And you get the script and you practice throwing the ball into the stands and all that kind of stuff. Did that for a day. Was in Salt. Got Angelina Jolie run by me like 50 times in the subway.
You were in Salt?
I was in Salt. I'm the guy standing there with the newspaper where everyone runs up and looks around and then runs past.
I'm gonna go find that tonight. I'm gonna rewatch it, and I'm gonna.
My nephew did it. Oh, I've been on all sorts of TV shows. I've done it in LA. The most ironic one, being a political guy, was I was in this TV show, and in the TV show, one of the main characters is running for city council. And so they filmed an ad within an ad. They filmed a classic ad of this person running, a campaign ad. So I was playing the policeman. They had like a fireman, a policeman, different. And so she walks up to us. And so I'm in the shot for like 20 seconds as she walks with us and does her campaign picture. We're going like this and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's just that campaign ad, the fake campaign ad that they did for the TV show was better than most any campaign I've seen a real city council person.
What's the coolest one you've ever been in your mind?
Well, I got to tell you, when I was in The Last Airbender, the director sat down next to me.
Yeah.
And then he was talking to some guys, and then I got to talk to the director just just one-on-one.
Yeah.
That was super, super cool. But I, being the guy I am with the short hair, I play a lot of lawyers.
Yeah.
I play a lot of military guy, a lot of FBI guy. I did, there was a show about the CIA, and I did the CIA probably for a couple months.
Wow.
Driving 70 miles to do a fake CIA building and stuff like that. So this just a lot of cool things. I had a gun once, which they had to, didn't have blanks in it, but they had to escort me.
Yeah.
There was the, what's that? The Transformer movie. Did a Transformer movie once, and that was really cool. It was a 12-hour, like 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. and I was a SWAT team member, and I'm jumping out of the truck with the SWAT team, and I once again I had a real, military rifle.
Yeah.
Just nothing in it. So they hired some military guys to shoot the blanks because they didn't trust us.
Yeah.
But that was really cool, being in the SWAT team, the full SWAT team. So you get to play a lot of stuff. You get to see these big famous people. How do they really act? Angelina Jolie was really nice. And they get bored, and you're not allowed to talk to them unless they talk to you first.
Right.
But the one thing I will say is that the big movie stars and the unions are just hypocrites, because they have a union structure, a due structure, which is, how they talk about the more you make, the more you should pay?
Right.
It's the opposite. In the union structure, the more you make, the less you pay.
Oh.
So percentage-wise, as you make more, you pay less dues, percentage-wise.
That's crazy.
And so the struggling actors, and I'm not a struggling actor because I just do it for fun when I'm in central casting and things come up and I say I'm available and do it when I have time. But the struggling actors who are trying to make ends meet, or making $40,000, $50,000 a year, getting parts, they have the heaviest percentage of dues, while the ones making $1 million a year, at a certain amount, they stop paying dues and then they make above amount.
Oh my
I always found that hypocritical.
Yeah.
These guys would go on TV about how we need to pay the rich, but you rich movie stars, you pay the least in the dues.
Yeah. I forgot about that. You are in a union.
Right.
That's crazy.
Union. Yeah, I'm a card-carrying union member.
Wow. That's so funny. Surely somebody will come after you for saying that.
That's right. That's right. You must reform the SAG-AFTRA union.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, this was a lot of fun. Thanks so much for doing this. Are you even on social media? Is there anywhere where people can go?
Dad convinced me to finally get on X.
Oh yeah, that's right. He told me about that.
So
you're on X now.
Yeah, Darin Selnick, and I'm on X, and I do a lot of work with Mark Lucas.
Yep.
Veteran Action.
Yeah. He's
putting up the good fights. He's a hard charging guy when it comes to his videos and stuff like that. Lays it all out, smash mouth.
I saw the Gallego one.
Yeah, go on, right. Check out. I have the Gallego on there.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, as opposed to the Democrats, it's all based in fact.
Yep. We
don't make stuff up. And when I do op-eds and everything, it's all based in fact. And when I advise on these videos, it's like, we have to say it so it's based in fact. So no one come after you and say you made that up. So it's all based in fact, and fact is stranger than fiction most of the time, if you dig for it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Appreciate it. It's been an honor.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Moment of Truth. You can find out more about everything that we're doing at American Moment at americanmoment.org. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we will see you again next week. Moment of Truth is an American Moment podcast taped at the Conservative Partnership Campus Studios and is produced by Jake Mercier and Hunter Smith, with original graphics and title cards by Jared Cummings. Our intro song is A Minor Struggle by Ryan Serenich, and our website is americanmoment.org.